Welcome back to Cowboy Libertarian for the second hour. We're going to be talking about Benghazi and some foreign policy issues this hour. You want to join in and chime in on Benghazi? Why don't we just set the phone right up right now, 916-921-1530, 800-834-1530. Also got a problem in a little place called Ukraine. And those things seem to be getting out of hand on a daily basis. We'll see what Vladimir Putin does. I'm sure he'll be very threatened by the fact that the president and all the hoity-toities in Washington are attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Gee, isn't that great? Washington's very own drunken bacchanalia, where they get to make fun of whoever they get to make fun of. Usually they get to make fun of people out in the real part of America, the bumpkins, because they don't care too much for the bumpkins. Anyway, what did we learn this week in Benghazi? Well, we learned that, I guess, to get stuff out of the White House and or the State Department and or the Barack Obama administration, you got to file a lawsuit. Obviously, if you're a member of Congress, you demand to see a document, they tell you, goodbye. We're not going to answer that. No, we're not going to do that. So, Judicial Watch files a lawsuit, FOIA request, and lo and behold, what do we find out? We find out that the White House knew full well that this was not about an internet video when they crafted the talking points and sent Susan Rice, who at the time was UN ambassador. Why was she sent? Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Why wasn't she sent? Oh, I forgot. We have to keep Hillary's pantsuits clean until 2016. Ooh, keep her pantsuits clean till 2016. Hey, that's a great slogan for the Hillary Clinton campaign. Keeping her pantsuits clean for 2016. I like it. I'm going to use that again. Anyway, so what do we find out? Well, they had a pretty detailed memo. And one of the young whippersnappers who make up the Obama communications, the Kitty Communications Corps, a Mr. Tommy Vietor, he said to Bret Baier, this is a man, by the way, who is the National Security Council spokesperson. He said, dude, like that was 2 years ago. Well, sorry, dude, Tommy, dude, you're going to get a subpoena. And we'll see how you are under the hot lights, dude. Then yesterday he tried to backtrack a little, and he said, on MSNBC, naturally, and he said, Bret Baier was asking me to remember what if I changed a word on September 14th, my frustration came through. I guess you're only supposed to speak the Queen's English on Fox, but obviously what happened that day was an absolute tragedy, and what I wished we talked more about on Fox and everywhere else is what we're doing to make sure it never happens again. This is what they do. Yeah, it happened, but let's move on. Remember the organization MoveOn.org? You know where that came from? Because the impeachment of Bill Clinton, oh, can't we just move on? It really isn't that big a deal. Let's just move on. No, let's not move on. I'm tired of moving on. I want to get some answers. Mr. Tommy Vietor, who in 2008 started off as a van driver for Obama's campaign, a van driver for the press. And now, then he became the national security spokesperson. He has no foreign policy experience, no diplomatic experience. He doesn't even have any military experience. He's one of these kids who are wet behind the ears, who they put in positions of power. Jen Psaki, over at the State Department, tweeting on Ukraine. Oh, boy, that's going to scare the Russians. Boy, woo, Vladimir Putin was laughing so hard they had to pick him off the floor in the Kremlin. And Ben Rhodes, the speechwriter, who crafted this memo, this grand lie. Old Ben Rhodes, you know what he got? He got a master's in fiction writing from New York University in 2001. Then he went to work for Lee Hamilton, a former congressman, in some think tank. That's the extent of his national security experience. And they say he's the one that was advising Obama on Egypt. How about getting some Egypt experts? Where do they find, they put these, this is great, diversity, great, wonderful. Let's have all these kids running the government. They got no experience. None, zero, bupkis. They're political hacks. And yet they're the ones out there crafting this stuff. Now, on Bill Maher last night, he said, smoking gun, what is it? There's just never any there. This is Gavin Newsom, our lieutenant governor. I know it's absurd. And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, this last week, the obsession with Obamacare seemed to wane a little, and they went back to the golden old Benghazi. What shows they're defensive. Hey, Gavin, get your head out of your collective you-know-what. You live in San Francisco. What do you know about the rest of the world and what people think? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So yuck it up with Bill Maher. But there's something there. And there's questions we should be asking about this. And finally, John Boehner has decided, takes a little while to light a fire under old Speaker, he decided, I've had enough. We're going to have a select committee with subpoena power. Now we're going to get somewhere. The rumor is that Congressman Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, former prosecutor, is in line for the chairmanship, and I certainly hope he gets it. If you just Google Trey Gowdy, TreyGowdy, and you will see some YouTube videos. He knows how to ask questions in congressional hearings because he's a former prosecutor. And it reminds me of another South Carolinian that ran a pretty select committee back 40 years ago. His name was Sam Ervin, senator from South Carolina, and it was the Watergate Committee. Now, is this Watergate? Nope, not yet. But remember, the lesson of Watergate, the cover-up. The cover-up is always worse than the original sin. You got to come clean. It's the biggest PR, the easiest thing they teach you in PR school. Come clean. Deal with the fallout later. Come clean in the beginning. And they haven't. And they brought this upon themselves. We're going to talk more about Benghazi and take your calls. 916-921-1530, 800-834-1530. You're listening to the Cowboy Libertarian on News Radio, KFBK, now on 93.1 FM. Again, 921-1530, 800-834-1530. We're talking Benghazi, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cowboy Libertarian. We're talking about Benghazi and the new select committee that's been proposed by House Speaker John Boehner. 916-921-1530, 800-834-1530 if you want to join the program. This is eventually going to get back to Ms. Clinton, as it should. But again, I want the committee to go expand beyond just who wrote the talking points, and I think they will, especially if Trey Gowdy's in charge. Again, he's a former prosecutor. But dig deeper. I still want to know, why were all these CIA operatives in Benghazi? Nobody's ever said that. Yeah, you've heard rumors, they were shoveling guns to Syrian rebels or something. But come on, what were they doing there? We got all these people there unprotected. Why? Who put them there? And where was the president that night? And Secretary Clinton, who made the call not to send any help or even try? There's an old story when Dwight Eisenhower was being groomed by George Marshall in Washington in the early days of World War II. President Roosevelt invited him in because he was being groomed for senior service and wanted to get to know him. And Roosevelt asked him, the Philippines were in the process of the Battle of the Philippines was going on early 1942. And he said to Eisenhower, he said, should we try and save the Philippines? He said, let me think about it. He came back the next day, and the president asked him again, and he said, we should try, even if we fail. He said, the Filipinos will forgive failure. They won't forgive abandonment. And we're in the same situation. The American people will forgive failure if it's a good, honest try. They won't forgive American fighting men and women and American citizens being abandoned. That they won't forgive. And quite frankly, that's what this is all about in many ways. Let's go to Mark in Plumas County. Mark, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, my hat goes off to John Boehner for at least trying to do something, but I have a feeling it's going to be worthless trying to do anything with that monkey that we have in the big White House.
Let's not use terms like that.
Hey, anyway.
Please.
I spent 20 years in the special operations community, and I know for a fact there was a team about 4 hours from Benghazi, a special ops team, that could have had boots on the ground in about 4 hours. And they were scrambled to go on that mission, and as they got airborne in their Black Hawk, they were canceled. And that's totally uncalled for, I believe.
Well, you know something, Mark? It is interesting, don't you think? I mean, I can't. But even if that hadn't been the case, you scramble some jets. At least you buzz the buildings and scare somebody a little bit. I mean, I just can't believe that the decision was made by a bunch of civilians. Hey, these guys are just expendable.
Well, I think it was beyond the civilians. I think somebody in the
up the chain,
up the flagpole, as we call it, scrubbed that mission. Because I know for a fact, I know one of the boys that was over there, and with 4 hours from that location, and with his team of 5 guys, they would have overran 300 or 400 guys with no problem. I know what these guys are capable of doing. The team that was 4 hours from there.
Well, I find it. I find that the questions. I hope, and again, I'm sure you've seen Trey Gowdy before. I hope he's the chair.
Yeah, so do I.
But here's one other thing to think about, Mark. You know, when they have these hearings, every congressman's got to get up there and puff his chest, right?
Yep.
And that's how we don't get answers, because they're all concerned about getting their own damn sound bites. I'm hoping that if you get a guy like Trey Gowdy, you develop lines of questioning. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You have one guy say, you're going to ask about this, and another person, you're going to focus on this. And that's how you get answers in these things. You don't get answers by grandstanding. And I hope that they can have a chairman who's going to say, we're not here to grandstand, guys. We're here to get the truth. And that's the point.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It wasn't no hidden secret who scrambled or who canceled their mission. It was supposedly from the SACNAV, Secretary of the Navy, that canceled the mission on that particular team that was 4 hours.
Yeah, but Mark, come on. You don't think that went farther up the line? You know it did. You were in the military.
Yeah.
Now, they might try and sacrifice the Secretary of the Navy, but I got news for you. They can't sacrifice. Somebody made the call, and I think the call came from the White House, and that's where the problem lies.
Yep.
So
yeah, I believe that.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we sure will.
Thanks for the call, Mark.
Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
Bye.
Okay, let's go to Ray. Ray, how you doing?
Good. You know, this is something I've been after since the beginning. You know, the questions that really need to be asked on behalf of the American people are, where was our, quote, commander-in-chief? Where was our Secretary of State?
Mm-hmm.
A representative in a foreign land of the American people was being murdered.
Yeah.
Where were we? Why was this man not rescued and his people not rescued when we have the most awesome military in the United States? The following caller was absolutely right. We had the assets in the area. They could have been used and they weren't. But I guarantee you what's going to happen is they're going to find somebody that took that call in the White House, and they're the ones that the blame is going to be laid at, and they're the ones going to take the fall. And Mr. Obama is going to go waving into the future to his $1 million talking contracts and be written up in the history books as one of the greatest socialist presidents that's ever lived.
Well, he'll become at least the first socialist president. But you know, back to what you were talking about. Yes, and you know something? And you'll hear it in my cowboy wisdom later in the show. You know, it's one thing to tell a committee, a non-select committee, because the select committee has special powers.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to tell Darrell Issa, hey, you pound sand, we're not giving you nothing, right?
Yep.
Well, guess what? Wait till they start subpoenaing Tommy Vietor, Tommy Terrific, Dude, right? Wait till Dude gets his subpoena. Wait till Dude lawyers up. These guys are going to have to start lawyering up, just like Watergate.
Yes, and as an American citizen, I want to know why the representative in a foreign land that was there on my behalf, representing my proud and mighty nation, was allowed to linger and then be murdered and dragged in the street. Why did not the president react and say, this man represents our citizens and we are going to go and rescue him, save these people, and there's going to be hell to pay for what's going on the anniversary of September 11th. I know, and nothing. And you know something? And the Democrats, this is just a witch hunt. I got news for them. When people start to say things like that, they're scared. There's something there. Oh, they're scared to death. And I guarantee you, those little underlings who take phone calls, that's where sometimes you sweat them. And that's when you say, hey, you want to go down too? But I'm really, to me, Ray, it's also, what were all these guys doing there in the first place? We've never been told. With these secret arms deals? And oh, by the way, the original attack on Libya, where we freed them and liberated them, it turned Tripoli into the biggest arms bazaar on the planet. Second only to the arms bazaar going on in the Sinai, which is supplied by the arms that came from Libya. Right? It's a mess.
It's a mess. Well, let's see if we can't get to the bottom of the mess.
Semper Fi, Cowboy.
Hey, take care, Ray. Thanks, buddy. Okay, yeah, 2 former military, Special Forces, United States Marine Corps. And what do we find out? If you try, people will forgive failure. They won't forgive abandonment. And I think that's what scares the White House the most, that they abandon these people. They abandon them. And all those CIA agents, all the spooks that were in the annex, you don't think they're getting subpoenas? You don't think some of them want to actually get before somebody and tell the truth about what happened? I guarantee you there are. Double dang guarantee you there are. Now, where people say, well, Boehner finally got the message. Yeah, he finally got the message, but you know something? It shows the American people that they didn't jump right to a select committee. They tried it through regular order. The Democrats have stonewalled. This is what you get. This is what you get. Remember, Watergate was something that started late in Nixon's first term. The Watergate committee hearings didn't happen until 73, a year later. Nixon didn't leave office till 74, 40 years ago. This has a long way to go. This isn't a witch hunt. And I hope that we finally get some facts on this thing. And I hope people stop realizing that Hillary Clinton ain't the second coming. Because remember, we have to make sure she has clean pantsuits for 16. Clean for 16. You listen to Cowboy Libertarian, and we'll be back after these messages in the news with James Rojas, 916-921-1530, 800-834-1530, talking about... Welcome back to the Cowboy Libertarian. We're talking Benghazi this afternoon. 916-921-1530. You just heard James Rojas talking about Condoleezza Rice, a woman of great class, intellect, took on tough issues when she was Secretary of State. Let the chips fall where they may. Didn't back out of tough decisions. Didn't gallivant around the world while the world took our measure and found us weak. So a bunch of punk kids stormed the office at Rutgers, demanding that commencement invitation be revoked. Hey, ho, ho, Condi Rice has got to go. First of all, somebody should tell these young punks to get original. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. I mean, come on. The baby boomers invented this one. Find your own slogans. For crying out loud, quit stealing stuff. And they had a painting of her wearing a necklace of skulls next to an American flag dripping with blood. So they stormed the dean's office. Safia Harima, a school of arts and sciences sophomore, said that it was not about politics, it was about human decency. Oh, okay. Shireen Hamza said the protest is similar to what blacks endured during the civil rights movement. Because even with media coverage, an authorized protest, change is incredibly difficult. What change do you want? Civil rights movement? You know something? I'll tell you the civil rights movement. You weren't even there, kid. And second of all, there wasn't enough spanking in the last generation. Condoleezza Rice, a woman of great, great ability. Yeah. Yes, they had Snooki 2 years ago. That was their great hero. But Condoleezza, a woman of great accomplishment, again, who didn't back down from making the tough calls. She can't even give a graduation speech. But Queen Hillary can get $250,000 a speech, act like she has no idea what happened in Benghazi. After all, what difference does it make? And a woman of absolute zero accomplishment who didn't do anything for foreign policy. All the problems we got today is because Madam Hillary wanted to keep her pantsuits clean for 2016. Remember that. That's what this was about. Let's go to Dallas in the foothills. Dallas, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing there, Cowboy Libertarian?
Matter than wet hand.
Good. Well, I had kind of another theory, and I don't know how far out it is there, but I thought it might be worth mentioning.
All right.
Well, I may offend somebody with this. I'm going to use the B word, the Bible. There's a story in the Bible about a king who basically sent somebody somewhere to get rid of them, and that kind of is what I see this whole Benghazi thing as, like a setup.
Are you talking about David sending Bathsheba's husband away?
Exactly. You know the story. Yeah, King David.
Yeah, I kind of remember.
Well, I don't think it's for the same reason.
So who got sent away?
Well, Ambassador Stevens.
Oh, you mean he knew some stuff he was going to start talking?
It's what it looks like to me. To send him over, there's a request in extra security. There were, indications that Al-Qaeda was building up in the area.
Yeah, there were.
There were assets on the ground ready to go that could have gotten there in time had they been okayed, to take off. They were told to stand down, was my understanding.
Yeah, and I want to know who told them to stand down. Somebody had to give the order.
Exactly. Well, I have seen no accountability whatsoever in any part of this government.
I agree with you.
Started. So much for the more transparent government here.
They're as transparent as a pair of pantyhose.
Well, yeah, but I also think they're a little smarter than we give them credit for sometimes, and a hell of a lot more conniving.
Well, I'll tell you something. You can fool some of the people some of the time or all the people all the time, right? But you can't fool everybody. And eventually, you know something? Remember, as I said, in a select committee, they're going to be subpoenaing anybody who touched a piece of paper.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to see some accountability, but I don't know.
Oh, if I was Tommy Terrific Vieter, if I was him, I'd be buying myself a set of diapers.
Well, I got a train getting ready to go by me here. I'm
all right.
Kind of so. But on a parting note, the way I look at it is one way or another, it's going to get better.
I hope. I agree with you, Dallas. Let's think on those lines, okay?
All right. God bless you, brother.
You too, buddy. All right, let's go to Mark in Sacramento. Mark.
Yeah,
thanks
Cowboy
for waiting.
Libertarian, you're talking about Hillary wears pantsuits. Well, so does Condoleezza, and she ignored the warnings on the 9/11, and 3,000 people died.
What warnings did she ignore?
5,000 people died in Iraq because...
Sorry, we don't entertain conspiracy theories, Mark. Have a nice day. Let's go to Judy in Sacramento. Judy.
Yeah. My concern with the whole Benghazi thing is every time I hear about it on television, it makes me think about all the warnings the Bush administration had about 9/11.
What okay, you're the second person. What warnings? Wait a second. What warnings?
Oh, come on. You know, there was plenty of emails, warnings.
Show them to me.
Intelligence.
Show them to me. So wait, Judy. So you think that the president of the United States stood by and allowed it to happen? Have a nice day. I'm telling you, folks, we're not talking about conspiracy theories. Don't tell me about emails. Don't tell me about all that other garbage. Don't tell me about this stuff. Don't go back to 9/11. We're dealing with what happened in Benghazi 11 years later. We're not talking about that. I'm not going to entertain any calls about that. That's all conspiracy bunk. Bunk. Get that in your head, folks. We're not talking about that. Let's go to Chuck and Martinez. Hey, Chuck.
Hello. I just wanted to make you aware I haven't heard anything about the new diesel truck regulations that are coming that the state of California is putting in.
Oh, under AB 32?
Yes, and I understand that many of the long-distance truck drivers are going to stop servicing California.
I have heard things like that, Chuck, and I know one of the things I do know about it. I think they gave them a little extra time, didn't they, for a diesel truck? But even having said that, I talked to a truck driver. The cost of having to upgrade is pretty. Some guys have to get whole new trucks.
They have to get whole new engines in their trucks.
Are you a truck driver?
No, I'm serviced by a number of truck drivers that come into my shop.
Oh, okay.
And
what are they telling you? They're telling you that trucking is going to become difficult to do in the state? Yeah,
and that they're not going to be able to come into California from Nevada.
Well, if that's the case, it just adds to, if you obviously were listening earlier when we were talking about transportation. And if that's the case, our situation regarding the ports is even worse, because think about what you just said. They might refuse to come in, right?
Well, yes. How are they going to service the ports?
No, right, that's my point. Exactly. So if they can't service the ports, and now our competition from the Gulf and from the East Coast as they've widened the canal, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, I don't know who's thinking about these things.
Well, they're not thinking. That's the problem. You know, the rest of the country is not being forced into these kind of regulations, just California.
Yeah, I agree. And so we put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage right off the bat, right?
What's going on in Sacramento?
Well, when you find out, let me know, because I can't figure it out. As I say, and I said many times in this show, Chuck, it's not a legislative body where they look at the problems facing the state and try and figure out solutions. Special interests go up there and say, I want this, and I want that, and I want this. And it's left and right. Everybody wants something. Give me a little break from my business. Give me this for that. Give me this for that. And once you become that, instead of a deliberative body that says, look, we're the ones who are going to set the priorities. The special interests are the ones settling the priorities in the state, and that's backwards.
That's because the special interests have a financial commitment to the politicians.
Well, yeah, let's just call it a relationship not of convenience but of money.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck, I got a break for time. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You bet. Yeah, okay. You listen to Cowboy Libertarian on News Radio, KFBK, now on 93.1 FM, 916-921-1530, 800-834-1530. We'll be back with some final thoughts and your Cowboy wisdom for the week. Benghazi. Welcome back for the final segment of the Cowboy Libertarian. We've been talking about Benghazi this hour, but we're talking in the first hour regarding the transportation issues in California. And I want to thank Chuck from Martinez for calling in, because the truck issue is very big. Truckers under our new environmental Bible and under our new law, AB 32, have to get more pollution-free trucks, ones that don't emit as much into the atmosphere. And that's expensive. But, the people that make the rules don't have to buy a truck. They probably have never turned a wrench in their life. But they make the rules. But they never think, and Chuck was right on when he said, other states don't have to do this. That's right. So what do you do if you're a business? Right now, there's some of these larger ships, they got to send them to where they are, Long Beach or Oakland. But when you have an option, and I read some guy when I was doing all that reading about transportation of goods, one guy said the longer you can keep it on the ship, the better, to get it closer to your destination. Every time you got to take it off, that cost, cha-ching. Somebody charges you for taking it off the ship. Container goes off the ship, cha-ching. Container gets lifted onto trailer, cha-ching. Trailer goes out to rail center, cha-ching. Trailer gets loaded onto train, cha-ching. Boat goes from Shanghai to New York. Not many cha-chings in there because it gets to where it has to go. So again, I want to thank Chuck for bringing that up. We're doing this to ourselves in this state. You can't... Somebody's got to make some choices. Clean air, yes. Conservation, absolutely. That's just smart. But this generation of Americans think they invented recycling. Well, I hate to tell them, but I remember milk bottles, where you put them out on the stoop and the milkman came and picked them up and they went and they sterilized them, and guess what? You got another bottle of milk. So the idea that recycling was invented by this generation, or organic foods, or all this other stuff, oh, we're so wonderful. Baloney. And start realizing that other states are doing other things. There's competition. And if we don't get off this Gloria Swanson, we are so wonderful, we still are wonderful, we have multicultural and diversity. If we don't get off that shtick, we're done. Don't let anybody tell you that, well, we can replace that. Well, then we can replace those jobs. It's not as easy as people think. 3,000 white-collar jobs are gone. Fewer people paying taxes in California. Well, we're going to replace that, they say, with 1,000 Boeing workers. Well, you're still 2,000 in the hole. Who's paying the taxes to do all the other things everybody else wants to do? So that's what's going on there. As far as Benghazi goes, let me say, again, I hope that Trey Gowdy becomes the chair. I hope he runs a respectful hearing. But I hope he runs it so they get answers and not grandstanding. We don't need grandstanding. Sweat a few of these punks. I'd love to see Tommy Vietor being cross-examined by Trey Gowdy. I'd pay money to see it. Thank God I'm going to get it for free. I can't wait till Ben Rhodes gets up there. And by gosh, I'd subpoena Valerie Jarrett. She seems to think she's the queen bee over there. Fine. Let's get her on the stand. And if she doesn't want to have a subpoena, throw her in a booby hatch. Throw her in a clink. And let's get Hillary Clinton in front of a committee, asking some real questions. We got time for one call, so let's go to Jay. Jay.
Oh, yes, Cowboy Libertarian. You know, I was just driving along, and you made the remark about milk bottles being recycled, but I remember when I was a child and came from a pretty big family in New England, and I remember when even beer bottles were recycled, and kids would wait for Dad to drink a bottle of beer so we could go get a nickel.
Well, but you know, I don't know, there's a movie, there's an old movie called In Cold Blood. Did you ever seen it?
Oh, many years ago.
Okay, but remember there's a scene when they're driving along the desert in Nevada, and they don't have any money.
Right.
And they pick up a young kid and his injured grandfather, and they're picking up bottles alongside the road.
That's right.
And they got a nickel for 1 and 3 cents. I remember that as a kid, too.
Yeah, back in those days, people smoked cigarette butts out of the...
Well, of course we did. Cigarettes are dang expensive.
But but I'll tell you what, the streets were pretty clean.
Well, if you're from New England, my dad did his medical residency at Mass General.
Oh yes.
And
right.
my brother, when he moved back there, he got in with a gang of kids, and they put, everybody had those little boxes on your stoop, and you put the milk bottles in them.
Oh heavens, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well.
Yeah.
My brother and his little gang at the tender age of 6 and 7 thought the milk bottles, it would be kind of fun to pee in them.
Yeah, nothing was wasted. I remember back in those days, too, when the ragman came every week and picked up all of the old clothes to recycle.
Now they'd call him a recycler.
NICO would call them recyclers, but in those days they were everybody had one of those burlap bags they'd come around and collect. So
my grandfather on my father's side was a ragman, and he had a horse in the back of the family store.
Exactly. Nothing was wasted.
That's why? Because there's nothing new under the sun.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And the cobblers were in great demand too, because even shoes were passed down, or else the new soles and new heels were put on. So we didn't waste anything.
Jay, I got to tell you, my mother bought a sweater on sale. It was a second from the looms up in Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
From one of the mill towns.
Right.
My brother wore that sweater. My next brother wore the sweater. I wore the sweater. My other brother wore the sweater.
Uh-huh.
Finally wore out. Hey, I got to run.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
And now for your Cowboy Wisdom for the week. For over 18 months, House Republicans in Congress have been trying to find the truth about what happened in Benghazi, Libya on September 11, 2012. They have subpoenaed documents from the White House, held numerous hearings, and yet they still could not get the information they demanded. They were stonewalled at every turn by the political hacks and campaign operatives that the president has entrusted with the national security of this great nation. It took a lawsuit by Judicial Watch to uncover the memo that this week broke the story wide open. The memo was written by senior Obama advisor Ben Rhodes. That seems appropriate since in 2001 he received a Master in Fine Arts in Fiction Writing from New York University. And what a fiction he produced. In the memo, the crack communications team at the White House is seen hatching a cover story that the attack that killed 4 Americans was because of an internet video that got Muslims all around the world all lathered up. It was a demonstration that got out of hand, not a terrorist attack. After all, the election was only 2 months away, and the president was campaigning for re-election on the slogan, Bin Laden is dead, and Al-Qaeda is on the run. If the assault on the consulate was indeed a terrorist attack, it would destroy that narrative and open up the president to heavy criticism at a crucial juncture in the 2012 campaign. So they made up a lie to protect the president. Now, let's get this straight. They didn't misspeak or mislead. They outright lied from the very beginning. When questioned about Benghazi in January 2013 before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Hillary Clinton was indignant that she was even being questioned. In her Oscar, Emmy, and People's Choice Award-winning performance, she infamously and angrily stated, "With all due respect, the fact is we have 4 dead Americans. Whether it was because of a protest or because guys outside for a walk one night decided to go kill some Americans. What difference at this point does it make?" Well, turns out, Madam Secretary, it makes a hell of a difference, as you are about to find out when the House Select Committee on Benghazi begins its work. Thomas Jefferson once said, "He who permits himself to lie once finds it much easier to do a second and third time, till at length it becomes habitual." And he didn't even know the Clintons. The White House, from Benghazi affair to the "if you like your plan, you can keep it" cattle crap, has made lying to the American people habitual. Even Obama's Amen Corner in the media finally realized they were duped and are now out with a vengeance to prove they are not biased. It ain't good for the White House that the media put down their pom-poms and picked up their clubs. But it is good for the American people and, more importantly, for getting the truth. So, here's your Cowboy Wisdom for the week. The easiest way to eat crow is while it's still warm. The colder it gets, the harder it is to swallow. I'm quite sure the White House thinks they can keep stonewalling. But as President Nixon found out, when subpoenas are involved and staffers need to lawyer up, someone will crack and tell the truth. So it would be best if they just come clean and get it all out, take their medicine and eat some crow. A slice of humble pie would be a good dessert to that crow, although I don't expect humility from this bunch of New Age narcissists. Because if they think they can ride this out, they are badly mistaken. And that crow will be mighty unappetizing in a few months once Congress starts digging. Well, that's it for the program today. been a pleasure being with you as always. I do encourage you to go see my friends at Lasher's Elk Grove Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram SRT and ask for Vince. Vince will do his best to give you a deal. He'll give you a great deal. But more than that, for the month of May, which I've dubbed Military Awareness Month, it helps veterans. And money is going to go to help my friend Rick at Horses for Heroes. We're going to help at Horses for Healing here. We're going to help Horses for Healing Heroes in Elk Grove. We're going to help a lot of people. But remember, it's not enough to say, thank you for your service. We got to start saying, I got your back. We'll see you next week. God bless, and have a great week. Bye-bye.